live again on the other flat channel.
I forgot to ask you if you had any other housekeeping other than just reminding people again about being off the second week of June, if you want to do that again.
I don't think we need to do that again now. No, I don't think so.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Erica, and thank you.
If you
everybody
just
in Tool Girl.
if you just just ask if I have any housekeeping, because I'll just talk about like what's going on, because I've got a Zoom meeting Erica and I do with the legal team for the next case on Friday, so we're hoping to push that, get that thing started.
Cool.
There we go. Everybody's come back in. What's up, Josh? And Kathy's back, and Monica and Danielle made it. You figured it out, Danielle. Great. I said that as though I don't know you. Maybe it's easy for you to figure things like that out. Maybe it's hard. We don't know.
We're happy either way.
Yeah, I'm glad you made it. Jen, ahoy, everybody. Everybody's saying ahoy. I feel like we need to.
Yo ho, a pirate's life for me. We pillage and plunder, we rifle and loot, drink up me heart is yo ho.
And for the audio people, that'll probably be removed.
I'm sure that's good.
Oh, I should just tell you, there is a setting where you can tell to keep speech and music, and then it won't remove
there you
music too. It will remove a lot of my chomping on my Apple.
That's a shame.
I believe.
Everyone should get a chance to enjoy that.
Mr. Scott said, "Arr." I think that's what that was for. It just says R.
Oh, good point. Hit that like. Sure, smash that like.
Yeah, smash the like, guys. Smash it.
Why not?
That helps. I don't know why or how it could possibly help us. We don't even monetize these, but I hear other YouTubers say it's really important for you to smash the like button. So
or smash the like button, depending on
hit the dislike. We don't give a shit, because I've been told. Yeah, listen, I was told it doesn't matter. It's because it's engagement. Yeah.
Whoa, interesting. Interesting.
Shit. Actually, don't do that, because it will hurt my feelings. It will hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
It was. Right.
It definitely was. Arr.
What up, G? From Tony. Tony said,
"What's up, G? What is up, G? Which one's G?
I think I'm G. You're G.
You're
I don't JMB.
know.
I don't know.
What up, G? Maybe it's someone in the. Oh, maybe it's Grayson. Maybe people are saying hi to each other.
It's and we're not even
it's not always about us. It almost seems like it's not always about us. Fair.
Did Amy say she's making yogurt?
Yeah, I was going to ask about that too.
How do you make? How does
but
one
I?
make
But then I was
yogurt?
like, no. But I know that Amy makes stuff. Like Amy bakes and stuff. So
just to be clear,
Amy's churning yogurt.
Just to be clear from Tony, everyone is G.
Thanks, Tony.
I will be sure to relay to my students tomorrow that I've been told I'm G.
Yeah.
So y'all can call me Mr. G.
Yeah. What was the one that Erica was doing that you hated so much? It was like
chat.
Crowd or Chat.
Chat, yeah.
Gotcha.
Hey, Chat. Yeah, did not care for that.
No,
did I tell you about the duck situation in our school? We should talk about that in the pregame.
You did.
It's not going well with those ducks.
I don't want to know that.
Oh, it's not. I mean, listen, it's just it's nothing like terrible. Well, I mean, here's the thing. Is baby ducks in the wild generally don't all survive. You get, they get cold, things happen.
Yeah.
But it's as sad as these situations have become. The fact that our secretary, who's my friend Nate, who is one of the teachers' wife, it's a 5-alarm emergency every time she notices a duck not moving faster. Before it's made for some amusing situations with the duck, because a lot of times what's happening is they don't get back to the nest and they're getting cold and they're getting lethargic. There have been ducks walked around the school. Well, there's a happy ending to some of them. There have been several of them.
Some of them
have been walked around the school, tucked between the breasts of people to warm them up.
Yeah,
see what I mean?
Cute.
It's like,
yeah, that's good.
Some amusing things that are happening.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Definitely.
When your secretary is talking to you, and then you start hearing chirping and seeing stuff, it's like, oh, it's coming back to life. It's coming back.
That's so cute. I'm back on board.
Yeah.
But in my mind, they're all fine.
They're all fine. They've all been, we warm them up, we send them back. They're
great.
Kim bought them a pool. She bought them a pool to put out there the other day. It's like she's like messaging me. I'm like talking to her husband Nate about something else while she's messaging me pictures of this pool. Like, is this good? Can they get in this? I'm like, this is what you're worried about right now. We're trying to keep them alive. You're trying to give them a swimming pool.
Oh,
Yeah, and then Nate's like, "Yeah, I
that's good
was
people.
required to go buy the pool and install the
Of
pool for
course.
them." Yeah.
Of course, absolutely. That's really nice.
No, Susan, that's not what's going on.
Uh,
But the thing is, I
uh,
did make the recommendation, and that turned for a while. She kept telling me to piss off because I kept telling them like just go in the bathroom and tuck it in that they need. And she kept thinking, and then after a day of this, of her trying every other thing in the world, she's like, I had looked it up, and that's actually a thing. I'm like, I know, that's what I've been telling you.
I'm sorry. That's on you
It's not on me.
because you are the kind of person that people want to be like, bullshit.
He's messing with me.
You're messing with me.
Yeah.
You mess with people.
Yeah,
They're not
I
complete
kept telling
people.
her I was like, because it had come up when I had quail before that, and I remember Becky looking it up, and it was like they need body heat if you can like tuck them in there, and then you can keep them. That'll keep them very warm, and then they'll come back. And I was like, shut up, I'm not doing that. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
yeah, then she's like, it's actually a thing.
Yeah.
I know, I know,
Kathy,
Kat.
you're welcoming Hannah, who finally has made the live, and you are welcoming her to what you're calling the shit show.
Yeah, what are we talking about? This is
That's
not a shit
so
show.
mean and true.
Oh, like
No, it is
quail
a
on it.
shit
All right.
show.
We need to probably start the show, I think.
Great.
We're saying, Zach, are you ready? So we're gonna end the pregame. Pre-gamers, we love you guys. Thank you so much
Thanks,
for
Gamer.
helping us keep the lights on. You guys are a big part of the reason why we're able to continue doing this
Isn't that the truth?
every week in these tumultuous times. We love you,
Yeah.
patrons.
Thanks,
Good
patrons.
day.
Oh, good day.
Don't say it like
Downton Abbey over
I
here.
do just sound dumb. I always have to end on an insult. Okay. All right. We're going to hit record on the big show.
Recording.
Recording. 1, 2, 3.
Ahoy, friends. You are listening to the Friday follow-up for episode 21 of season 16. Richard Allen, guilty or not guilty, in which Bob sort of takes all of the information he synthesized over the last couple of episodes, talking about the Richard Allen case and letting us know his official opinion with the information that he has right now. We are sans Zach. That is why I am doing this clunky intro. Bob, let's take some attention away from it by telling us if we have any housekeeping.
First of all, you're using some words that I don't understand, and so I'm going to take it as disrespect.
Oh, wow. Just like that. Okay.
Listen, you said I
Got it.
synthesized information. I don't know what that means.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. No, yeah, Zach is out on assignment today, so it's just me and Jan. So we've gone from having like 4 people at a time to just the 2 of us. Which led to a really nice in-depth pregame for you page. If you're a patron, check out this week's pregame. They're really good conversations there between me and JP. Very insightful. That's the way I would describe them.
sometimes animal related,
Yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
food related, sometimes both.
were-
Sometimes there's an intersection there.
There were impressions. There was singing.
Yeah.
All
Well,
all right, but getting serious into our episode today. As far as any housekeeping goes, the only thing I've got for you is, man, we are trying real hard to get going on season 17. We have Erica and I have a meeting with the team of attorneys on that case this Friday to discuss the requests that I made a month ago. So hopefully that's going to go well, because it was kind of like the last thing to like get us where we actually start recording these episodes. So
sure.
we should be able to put them out at this point. As I've mentioned to you guys, the first whatever that is, the June 9th through or whatever, we're going to be off that week. So it probably makes the most sense for us, because that's only like 3-4 weeks away. But we'll just continue season 16 up through that, and then when we come back from our vacation, then we're gonna start on season 17. That's the hope. Fingers crossed. We on our end are really raring and ready to go on it. So we're just and again, it as I mentioned before, it's not to say anything negative about the team. It's just this person is lucky enough to have a very good and very large legal team working for them, but it just makes hoops to jump through. Every step has to kind of go up the ladder. So but once we get past this hurdle, then we should just be locked and loaded and just going with episodes, because it is not, nor is it ever, a team of attorneys telling us what to do. It doesn't work like that. It's just there's just some certain access issues that we need to work out, and then we just go. So that should be coming up pretty soon. The kids podcast on Wednesday, the third episode of the J&J one came out. That's the Janice Sanders and Janice Lang's podcast. Just dropped this on Wednesday, and Friday is the last new series before we start circling back to the other ones. And that's the one that Zach's been waiting for. That is the disappearance of Stephen Kraft, who is from our county, from several years ago. So, and that's another really good one. So that's going to start on Friday. So it'll be Friday, Wednesday, Friday for that one, for that series. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get into this. Jana, what did you take about my synthesizing of this information? And
Great use of the word, Bob, first of all. So kudos for that. Do you know what a kudo is? I don't either. No, I mean, I think, I really appreciated your attention to this. There are definitely a lot of questions that came up in the follow-up. There are things that people have brought up that I'm interested to address with you because at least from their perspective, it is also information that came out of what is known of the trial, even without the trial transcripts. Or perhaps that isn't stuff that came up in the trial, and I'm just not, I'm not as I don't remember as clearly as I would have when it was happening and when it was being recapped by various media outlets and such. But I think it's fair. I think what you say is fair, and I appreciated. Well, I sent you an emotional text after I hadn't even finished listening to it, but I appreciate you kind of putting yourself out there, and I know that can be really hard. And I think even just knowing what you're doing for your students in general, outside of what you do for the podcast, those are the things that matter. And people trying to make you miserable, that's noise.
Yeah, I will say they definitely don't accomplish it. As we were talking a lot at the pregame about family and all the things that are that are important to us. But yeah, I definitely appreciate that. And as I think I recorded so long I don't remember, but I feel like I addressed this in here. I get these instances where people either trolling or just mad about my opinion or whatever that will throw that question at me. That's like, who the hell do you think you are answering this? Like, who cares what you have to think? And I had these moments where and I kind of had it this week because I don't know why it was one of those imposter syndrome or what it was, where it was like, why does anybody give a shit what I have to say about this? Like, I'm not. But then that was so most of you listeners, like you guys also keep me going too, because I try to go into every episode and everything that we're doing in the front of my mind that we're trying to do something good, whether it's to educate people about something or to spur a fair and honest conversation about something or to advocate for somebody who we believe is innocent, whatever the thing is. And that's kind of, I believe I like even said that out loud in the episode, which was that, it's like, yeah, but there's tens of thousands of people that are asking me my opinions about these things. So that's why I'm giving them. But the big thing that I'm trying to point out is that don't let that make you think that I think that my opinion is any more valuable than anyone else's. It's just, that's my opinion, and I'm giving it to you because you asked me for it.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I'm sorry to miss Zach because I'm very, very curious. Obviously, we've said every episode that we've ended up talking about this. It's also a really important case emotionally for Zach. So maybe we'll have a chance to touch base. Otherwise, I'm just going to text him and we'll have to have like a quick 3-person conversation where he weighs in. But yeah, we had a lot of engagement on the Facebook follow-up. For some reason, this particular follow-up post, usually people are really good about not weighing in and getting into back and forth with each other. I think the fact that that post turned into kind of an I don't want to say argument because people were being very respectful, but there was just a lot of back and forth and people seemed to not be able to resist replying to questions or thoughts that people were posting for us to discuss. I think that is just a microcosm of what this case has been for so many people, which is, like you've said time and time again, either people dig in or they are not able to dig in, but they feel like they're being judged for not digging in on their particular opinion. And it's a very emotional, and at the core of it is two beautiful little girls who we should not even have to be having this conversation. And I think that that's what I try to hold on to when I think about how contentious it gets, I just try to tell myself that every person who cares this much cares because wherever they land, they are very upset about what happened to these kids, and that is coming from a good place. So hopefully we can all kind of hold on to that no matter
Yeah,
what we think.
and I think that's what makes it so hard for me to let go of this one because we followed it so closely for so long, and it just so badly wanted justice for Abby and Libby, and felt like we got it in 2022 when the arrest was made finally, and it just I hate the fact that I can't come away from it feeling like they got it.
Yeah.
It's frustrating. That's like the biggest thing in the forefront of my mind is like for the people, as soon as you say I think this person might be not guilty, then there's people that come out and you're biased and da da da. It's like you don't understand. Like if I have a bias for this case, it was I desperately want Richard Allen to be guilty. I want this to be over. I want for there to be real justice served here. And I did, and so I went searching for that justice, and what you heard in this week's episode is what I came away with, and it's tragic, and it upsets me. Trust me, just as much as it does you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I and in reading other people's kind of compelling arguments or where they're coming from, where, as we've talked about many times again, there are people who feel this is actually very simple and that that it's amazing that so much was made out of um, the evidence not being there or the process not being complete. Who talk about stuff that I'm not even sure, like I said, I'm not even sure, I'm not confident anymore whether or not these were things that were talked about in the trial. And there was even a comment from someone who's like, why not wait until you have the trial transcripts to talk about all of this? Why do it now when you're still missing information? And I get that too. I guess I'll start with that. Do you have thoughts on kind of like whether or not you could have or should have waited until you had all of the transcripts?
Well, what you got to realize is this wasn't the plan.
Right.
I didn't decide like, hey, let's do a 5-part series on the Delphi case. That was never the plan. Remember, we have another case that we have. My office and corkboards and whiteboards are full of in episodes that are being written that we're ready to go. We're just right now. This season is just trying, filling time, trying to highlight people that are doing good work, talk about things that are on the top of people's minds that are interesting. Um, throughout this process. So what happened was that things just started getting piecemeal out. It was like, the bridge guy video came out and it was like, oh, now we have, and of course that had my attention. That's where my energy was going. It was to analyze that. It was top of conversation. So it was like, okay, well, let's do an episode about that. And
Mhm.
then the police interviews came out and it was just like one thing after another. It just led to the point where, and I had listened to Mata. I had listened to some of Andrea Burkhardt's stuff. I had listened to some of the Murder Sheet stuff, and I think I've got a pretty good grip from all sides as far as what there's different opinions on what it means. But and then I watched a lot of just legacy media news, read a lot about from reporters that were there. We got a pretty good grip on what were the points of the state's case, and we had enough of it to analyze that for me, it made sense to just at least put a button on it and give you final thoughts after, my final thoughts for now based on what we have. But I don't expect at all that there's going to be, oh, and now the transcripts are released and the state had this other huge piece of evidence that for some reason no one talked about. I just
Mm.
don't, that's not the case. So it's complete enough to do what I'm doing. And as I've said, this is not going to be a season for us. I'm not going into a long deep dive. It's not like when the trial transcript's up, we're going to do a 20 episode series
Right.
on this. We're just, that's what we've got the time right now. That's what's really occupying my mind. And so that's what I'm sharing with you guys.
Got it. Well, let's jump into some other kind of specific stuff. I tried to group this in such a way that it kind of made a sort of sense. So let's start with, I'm going to read this comment from Robert, but there's also a comment from Tony. They're essentially saying a similar thing, which is questions about this idea of the FBI warrant and what it means that they said that the person on the bridge matched the build potential build of Ron Logan. So Robert says, can I check about the height that the FBI thought Bridge Guy was? I've looked online, and the only sites I find all say the FBI thought the height was 5'6" to 5'10". I think Bob said that the 6'3" was used as part of the search warrant, which I don't think you ever said that. You just said like build. So
Right, yeah.
this gets into the semantics of build. I was just wondering if they could have exaggerated for the purposes of the arrest, or Tony says similarly, my understanding is that build, quote unquote, in a law enforcement definition does not include reference to height, but rather muscular, thin, husky, etc. Using this definition, could we sort of at least like set aside what you pulled from the FBI warrant as being like still a little bit squishy, for lack of a better word, in terms of like what it's really saying?
Well, that's good. What I was going to respond to that element of it, that build means this. It's what I was going to say is it's not that binary. It's not like it only equals this. And as far as like my take on it, that is so there were witness accounts, whatever, at trial where they said like 5'6" to 5'10", whatever. The only expert that we have is from the FBI warrant. And again, I didn't say that the FBI said the man on the bridge was 6'3". I'm not saying that, didn't say that. All I'm saying is, and kind of the point of this whole episode was, I only can work with what I have. And so I'm looking at where can I see where someone who has the tools, knowledge, and know-how to be able to to conduct a real analysis of that video and see what they said about it, as far as the height, build, anything like that. And all I have is they obviously researched Ron Logan's build. He's 6'3", and his weight and all that stuff. And then they analyzed the Bridge Guy video and said that he's similar build to the guy in the Bridge Guy video. To me, in order to make that assessment, I think that if their analysis was the guy on the bridge is 5'5" and Ron Logan is 6'3", they're not going to be like, yeah, but he's built the same. You know what I mean? They're like, yeah, but he's also heavy set, so that's good enough. Like, no, that's a big difference. So again, like, I get the people that don't care for don't care for that, or want to discard it. I'm just saying that's all I have to work with. And when I have the FBI saying it's a similar build, then I'm looking at the stark difference between the two, and that's all I'm basing that on is, if Bridge Guy is a similar build to Ron Logan, then the way my logic works on that is, well, if he's a similar build to 6'3" Ron Logan, then he's not a similar build to 5'5" Richard Allen.
Yeah.
That's the only place I'm coming from. And that doesn't mean, I would love to see an actual photogrammetry report, and I've heard a photogrammetry expert come on and say how tall that person is, but we just don't have that.
Yeah. Well, so my take on that is a little more cynical across the board, I'm afraid to say, but it's just sort of where I come from with it. I agree that I kind of agree with Tony, that I feel like I've heard, and again, this is totally just anecdotal, my own experience, my own memory, whether I'm right or wrong. I feel like I've heard a lot of like, you hear build coupled with height, like this person's height and build, person's height and build, sometimes a height, weight, and build, as kind of separate components. So from a cynical perspective, because we take a lot of looks at like documentation that is very carefully worded to get a certain result, I cynically feel that perhaps the FBI very intentionally left out height because they didn't feel confident or didn't feel they had the information to say that. And so they're like, but we do want the search warrant. So we're going to carefully not say anything about the height because that could be questioned. But if we just use the term build, that will get us the search warrant. It'll get us what we need. And we're not necessarily like lying, even though we kind of suspect maybe that this person is shorter than that.
Yeah, and that's very possible. That's not a possibility that I ruled out. I just don't know that. And unfortunately, if my understanding is right, they wanted to get the FBI agent that wrote that to testify, and something that he was out of town and couldn't get there, and they wouldn't let him. There's something came up, but anyway, we never were able to hear from him to get that answer. So I just don't have the answer.
Fair enough. I kind of threw the whole thing out. But that's just me. I mean, that's like my decision was like, I guess I'm not gonna take the build thing and the FBI thing as being one thing or the other.
Yeah, and keep in mind, that's why I was very careful that as far as wording goes, I never said I think Richard Allen's innocent. I'm looking at guilty, not guilty. What evidence do we have
Right,
to prove
right,
guilt, right? And it's like
right.
there's nothing in that FBI affidavit that indicates Richard Allen is the guy.
Towards return, yeah, I see what you're
Yeah,
saying.
and I want to point out too. So we have Mistress in the YouTube chat says that the she says here's the thing: the FBI never pressed harder on Ron Logan after their search warrant, so therefore he was dropped as a suspect from the FBI. Period. Dot. End of story. Again, we don't know what happened. What we know is when they did that was enough to do a search. They searched his property, didn't find any evidence. That's the same thing that happened with Richard Allen, except they didn't drop it, right? So we know that they did a search, they didn't find anything other than the bullet, which you've heard my opinion about the the gun and the bullet casing. So it's we don't the thing is, and Mistress, what I've been saying is regarding Richard or Ron Logan is I don't like I would love to see if if somehow a report comes out and says the FBI cleared him because of this. I'm like, cool, great, he's cleared. But we just don't have that. We don't know if he was cleared. You said that they never pressed any harder. Do you know that? Do you know they never interviewed him again? Do you know they never pushed it? Because I don't know that. Maybe you have more information than I do. We don't know what they did. We know that he was arrested shortly after that. He ended up in prison. Then he died in 2020. So we don't know. I think 2020 or 2021. So we just don't know. So again, I'm not saying that I think that Ron Logan did it or anything like that. I'm just saying this is all I have. I just don't have the answers that you're presuming.
Right. Well, maybe more of that will come to light, and I know that we're not gonna be covering it in a formal way at all, but, but maybe there will be more discussions to be had if there's more information like the trial transcripts that are released. But for now, Courtney says, "Was any digital evidence from RA's computer," that's Richard Allen, "computer's phone discussed during the trial? I know he expressed concern about them seeing his browser history, but I haven't seen anything about there being anything significant found. If his intent really was sexual assault, you would think that there would be some type of evidence." Yeah, I mean, that's a question that I see come up a lot. I think one of the things that gets pointed to is like, well, they never got his phone. But then other people say that they should have been able to get the data without the phone anyway. So again, I'm just confused about that. That's like another kind of thing that sort of cancels itself out for me. Um, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think
I
that
don't know
I
if you
don't
have
know
thoughts
the
about
answer
that.
to that.
Yeah.
So all I've heard, and I haven't heard anything from like Murder Sheet or Burkhardt or anybody else or on the news media that said they also presented this evidence about his phone and electronics history that was questionable because of this. I just haven't heard that, so it doesn't seem like there was anything there that was that was super important because I feel like we would have heard about it from somewhere.
Yeah. Sheila says regarding the van, apologies if this has been covered, but is there not home surveillance footage showing the white van going down the road? I swear I heard there was only one way in and out of his driveway, and there was a home that had a camera with footage showing the van go by. It was distant visible at a time later than when Weber testified to on the stand. Am I crazy? Sheila, I wish I had the answer, and I bet you Bob doesn't either.
Um, we're gonna have to fix this because I was reading.
Understood.
But you're talking about the van. Was she saying that she thought there was surveillance
But
footage?
there was discussion out there about there being actual surveillance footage showing it going down the road.
Okay.
But I guess I feel like if that was the case, that one or the other of the defense or the prosecution would have used that to their advantage if that was proven, right? I mean, if
Okay.
that was
So I can address that. So remember we talked a little bit about this a while ago that there was a surveillance photo like a Ring doorbell or something that showed Brad Weber's van driving down that road to his house, but there were the times it said it was like I want to say it said it was like 2:44 a.m. or something, and that was the whole
Oh,
thing.
right. Right.
That was the thing where the defense was like, it must have been, it was supposed to be PM, which then puts it there, because I think Libby's phone stopped connecting or stopped working or stopped moving at 2:32, and they're like, well, it came by 12 minutes later, and that doesn't fit the timeline of being interrupted by the van or whatever it was. But then the discussion we had about that it is like, what we know is the time is inaccurate.
Right.
because it says AM and the sun's out. So
Right.
as far as I'm
That
concerned,
that gets
all
canceled out too.
yeah. So as far as but I don't buy the defense's theory that well it must. Well, how do you know? Like
Right.
they just don't know. So all we know is the time's off. So
Right.
essentially it could be any time.
Yeah. God, that's why this case is so crazy and why I keep saying over and over they're gonna be teaching this case in law classes
Mhm.
for till the end of time because there are so many things like that are like, "Oh, it could be helpful to the defense, but it's too ambiguous, so it's gone. Oh, this could in my mind, this could be helpful to the prosecution, but it's also ambiguous in some kind of maddening way,
Right.
so it's gone." Like, it just keeps everything keeps canceling itself out, which is a very different conversation than like whether we're talking about proving actual innocence or not. But um, okay, so that answers that sort of in the same kind of infuriating way that a lot of stuff gets answered in this case, which is like big question marks. But Michelle E, this was sort of addressed already. Michelle, I think Bob did kind of address it throughout his process. Michelle says, I understand you felt compelled to cover the case. Why not wait until you have the trial transcripts? I did ask that already. But also, Michelle's asking if you're using media coverage as your primary material, can you please cite which sources your trial content and evidence reporting comes from? I thought you did
I
that.
did. Yeah, there was
Uh,
I don't remember the name the one that I used for the confessions was I don't remember. If you go back and listen to that episode, it was TV news out of I think Indianapolis that had a reporter in the room at the trial the whole time. So I was in they like basically published their notes, and so I was going through their notes of what happened in the trial that day. And then of course, so that was and I did that because I had, we've had Bob Mata on a few times talking about his experience, what he saw. And I trust Bob Mata. Nothing he said has been proven otherwise from anything else I've seen. And I've listened to the murder sheets, and they're obviously on the guilty side. And I wanted to find that where's a more neutral source that's not a podcaster that everybody's accusing of some bias. So I just went to that source.
Gotcha. Let's talk about the bullet for a second. Chris says, question, as a non-gun user, do police know the bullet was unspent if they concluded that the same markings were found on both what was found on the crime scene and the fired shot from Richard Allen's gun? That's a great question, Chris. I'm really glad you brought this up because we sort of talk about it as an absolute, and I can understand why those of us who are not gun owners could think, well, wait a minute, how do they know that the bullet is unspent if the
Yeah.
markings match? That's a good question. So thanks for that, asking for that clarification.
Yeah, so it's pretty simple. The bullet was still in it. So w- a bullet, what we would call a bullet, is actually it's three parts. So you have there's more parts than that, but you have a casing. So like after you shoot the round, all you have left is this like empty hollow brass cylinder. That's the casing, and then inside of that is the gunpowder, and then the bullet is on the end of it. So if you have an unspent round, it still has the bullet crimped into it, connected to it. It hasn't been fired. And then also there's a primer in the back of it that ignites the gunpowder to force the projectile out. And when that's been fired, the firing pin makes like a dimple in it. And that's what it's kind of think of it like a cap. There's like, like the old cap guns. But there's like a dimple in it. So it's not like this is not difficult to figure out if if you saw the two together. If you have an empty shell casing, that's one that's been spent, it's been fired. And if you have one that still has the bullet attached to it, it was unspent. So, and that's what they found. They found a bullet. They found a fully intact bullet that still had the bullet crimped into the casing on the ground.
Got it. Thank you. Tony says, do you think there's any possibility the unspent round found at the crime scene could be unrelated to the murders?
I mean, anything's possible, but I mean, it was not like it was found in some obscure location. It was found, I
Right.
think they said 6 inches from Libby's foot.
Yeah.
So it was like right there. Um, is it possible that there just happened to be an unspent bullet right there? That's you can't say it's impossible, but I would say it's probably unlikely. It would be more likely, I think, if it was a spent round, if there was just a shell casing there, because someone could have been going through there and target shooting or whatever. And when
Yeah.
you shoot from a semi-automatic, those spent rounds eject, just the shell casings eject all over the place, and people don't always pick them up. But for there to be an unspent round, that would be extremely unlikely.
You said that it was from a distance from Libby's foot, and again, this is not our case, and so I don't want to. I hope this isn't irresponsible. I guess I'm not holding you to the same level, the standard that I would if we were talking about for example, Adnan's case, or for example, Jody's case, or something like that.
Mhm.
But was it possible that it was underneath her? Because that just seems like a really big thing to miss if you are the perpetrator. Like if it's just on the ground right near someone's foot, it just seems like a big thing to miss. But I don't know.
It is until, as you were saying that, I was thinking of when I dropped my coffee cup in my classroom the other day, and the little slider lid off of my Yeti cup bounced right in front of me under a table, and it
Mhm.
took me and 2 students 15 minutes to find it. Um,
Understood.
yeah, so I mean, yeah, when the forensics team's there searching in grids, every single nook and cranny of that area, they're gonna find it, but it doesn't necessarily either didn't, the offender didn't think to look for it, didn't care,
Yeah.
or it's also possible that they were looking a very I do with the type of work the world that I live in, it's like I'm working on something and I drop a screw right at
Mhm.
my feet, and then I never find it. You know what I
And
mean?
if you were in a panic situation, Susan brings up
Yeah,
in the chat that if it's in the leaves, thank you for the clarification. Yeah, and again, we don't have open documents right now
right, or
during this
photos,
follow
yeah.
up to address that. So apologies for that. But um, and so Josh says, oh, here we go. Sorry. So moving on, Chris says, what about the changing story about when he was on the trails? Did it end up just not feeling so compelling? And Josh says something similar, so I'm going to just piggyback that there. My question would be, when was Richard Allen on the bridge? Why is his memory allowed to improve 5 years after the fact, when a few days after the killing he stated 1:30 to 3:30? Is there a scenario where he both arrives at 1:30, which was the original claim, and is not bridge guy?
I mean, yeah,
So
we
there's a
don't
lot
you
going
can
on in that, but
yeah, who knows, if he when he arrived, if he was bridge guy. But as far as the memory improving, if you remember back to that police interview, that was the thing that I flagged that it's not, and I'm sure they're making, when I said that Brad Weber's memory certainly didn't improve 7 years later. So let's look at these two scenarios. In both cases, I think there is utility to change the story. Can be. We don't know in
right,
Brad Weber's case if he was, if he was told by the prosecution what would be, who knows? But I find it convenient that that in his initial interview, he says, I got off work, I went and serviced some ATM machines and then got home, sometime later. Then you get Richard Allen's confession that's given to the prosecution where he says, right when I was starting to do this van drove by and that's what spooked me. And then the story changes to fit that. Okay, so there can be some utility there, but no, I don't excuse that as, best most innocuous reason is just bad memory. But if I have two different versions and it's completely honest mistake, but if it's bad memory, I'm going with the version that happened right afterwards. That's when you're more likely to remember what happened. These aren't insignificant differences.
right.
Got off work, drove straight home, or got off work and went and did all these things before I went home, right? So in Richard Allen's case, I'm not excusing that either. I'm not saying, well, later his memory was improved and he said he got to the bridge at noon. I don't, I don't buy that.
Yeah,
But again, there's utility there in whether you're looking at it from a guilty or an innocent perspective. Either way, if if he goes the day after, I mean, to be, and I got to just stop giving a shit what people think because I'm already thinking in my mind like, oh, of course you're going to think that because you think he's not guilty. I'm just going to tell you what I think, and you can care or not care. To me, that leans more innocent because when he goes right after the crime, they're like, when you get there, I got there at 1:30. I was out there. I went out by the bridge. I did all these things. Then 5 years later, now it's out there that the girls were killed at this time. People know they were killed at 2:30. So now that he knows that, he says, "Oh, I got there at noon and I left by 1:30." He's he I don't buy that was just a memory shift. I think he was lying. I said that in the
right.
episode. I think he was lying
Yeah,
about that.
yeah,
Um, there are certainly people that'll say, "Well, he lied about it because he's guilty." But again, he would have to me, and I'm just explaining to you where my logic comes from. It's not from a place of bias, it's just a place of logic, right? So if he was the killer, when he went and interviewed the next day or whenever, 2 days later, whatever it was right after that, he knows when the girls were killed. He would know to tell them that he was that, that, oh, I need to get myself out of there. I mean, first of all, you don't go tell them you were there at all. But even if you did go tell them, you would alibi yourself. And instead, he put himself there during during the window of time when this could have happened.
Well, what if
But
he
then
knows he was seen? Like, if he knows he saw those 3 girls and he's assuming that, like, somehow they're going to find out anyway.
it's
But
possible, but there doesn't. What I was saying is, I don't see any indication that he would think that someone was going to identify him, right? So, and these are the scenarios I'm thinking about. Like, he goes and sees those 3 girls and is like, oh, I recognize that girl from the Rite Aid or CVS, wherever he worked.
Mhm.
Like, oh, they saw me, they could recognize me. Like, that didn't happen. Nobody came forward and said, yeah, I saw Richard Allen there. So there's there, you know what I mean? So I don't see why he would have had an indication that someone was going to put him on that scene, you know.
Mhm.
So, but again, I can see that's possible, but it's just, as far as I guess, to get back to the question, I don't excuse that. I think when he said that he was there earlier, it was because, innocent or guilty, he changed his story because he doesn't want, he's trying to make it so he's not there when the murders happen.
Mhm.
And I think you could do that whether you're innocent or you're guilty.
Got it. Yeah, I'm just gonna, I wanna read Lisa's full, post because she sort of puts everything together, and I think we had similar posts like this before, and I totally get it. But so this is another person who sort of has, they feel that they have the information they need to conclude that he's guilty, and I just want to give you a chance to weigh in on any of this that you want to. Lisa says, "Hi all. Richard Allen self-reported to police. We just talked about that. I believe 3 days after the body was found. Is this correct? I'd love to know from a reliable source. When was the bridge guy uh, photo and video released to the public?" Yeah, all this timeline stuff, Lisa, to me is also confusing. I'm going to stop right there and just address those because there's a lot of questions in here. The other thing is that I saw someone, I think it's American Night Mom, in the chat said, like, do we actually have the physical statement of Richard Allen saying, yes, I was there at this time? Like, do we have that piece of paper? We have the official statement, or is it like a cop saying, I seem to remember him saying he was there at blah, blah, blah.
We don't have, I don't think it's public.
Like, it wasn't made, like, was it part of the trial, etc.?
I don't know the answer to that. I
Okay.
don't know. Pause real quick, Erica. You can fix this. I'm going to look something up real quick. What day was the photo bridge guy released? Because it was a photo first to the public.
No, Zach. Zach would be looking it up.
Photo was the composite sketch of bridge. No. What? Not that. Not the composite sketch.
Susan, just to respond while Bob is looking that up, why are there so many horrible, creepy men in Delphi? Susan, you know this as just as well as I do. There's creepy men everywhere. They're everywhere. I wish that weren't true. I wish that weren't true.
The video. I'm gonna try one more time here. I'm not gonna find it quick. Well, one more thing I'm gonna try. Sorry.
Okay.
Guys,
Sure.
I promise on Friday this is gonna sound nice and smooth.
Thanks, Erica.
Yeah. Let me see if Google's sending me all over the place. So I'm going to try ChatGPT. Of course it's going to. No, I'm not. It's got to email me a code to log in. Of course it does. Never mind. I came this far. Hang on one second.
Got it. This is Bob digging in. I mean, I guess I could try to look. Where do you think he's going to find this information? The video, that's definitely from a long time. Yeah, that's more recent. Yeah. All right. I'm going to stop looking because why would I not also just keep you guys and be talking about it? Yeah, this is tough. I mean, this is a tough conversation because every time we have talked about this, I have felt so acutely the lack of like actual documentation, and I feel like I just keep asking questions about timelines or people or suspects or evidence that I just don't have any answer to, and I'm sure the answer exists. In some cases, it may be available to people now. In some cases, it may be part of trial transcripts that I don't have. But um, yeah, I feel uneasy about feeling like, oh God, I just don't have any of that at my
Got
fingertips,
it.
and it's uncomfortable. But for
Got it.
now, you have something, and I think Susan also looked it up. We'll see if
Okay.
it matches.
Here we go. So Erica, now after Janet asked the question, come back to this. I'll sound so super smart. So we just paused for a minute for me to go look this up. The screenshot of Bridge Guy from Libby's video was released the next day on February 15th. So it was just it was right,
2017,
yeah, 2017. So right away they're killed the 14th, released or found the 14th, right, and then released on the 15th. Richard Allen self-reported and was interviewed by police on the 16th, so the next day.
Okay. Okay, so going back to Lisa's post, so asking about when that was released, she says, "For me, RA puts himself on the bridge at the time of interest, reports seeing other people who we know were on the trails, has a voice that is for me the same as Bridge Guy, and reports being in the same clothes that Bridge Guy was wearing. I think Bridge Guy could have had no idea that he had been caught on video. There are no cameras in the area, and he could have been unaware Libby caught him on video. Surely, if he is guilty, he would not self-report as a witness after seeing himself on the news in the Bridge Guy video. Personally, I think he did it. Puts himself at the scene in the clothes. Witnesses only saw one man fitting this description. Surely it is him, although surely doesn't fulfill the burden of proof, and therefore by law, I think he's not guilty. My sticking point is, when did he self-report compared to when the Bridge Guy photo and video released?" So there is your answer to that, Lisa. I don't know if that changes anything for you, but the picture was out there, and
The day
he
before.
self-reported, correct?
Yeah, and so that kind of, yeah, to package that all together is just, yeah. So the picture comes out, so, and that was everywhere. I remember that's why I was looking it up, because I knew it was like almost immediate, because I remember thinking right away, oh, they're going to catch it. They got a picture of him. They got a picture of the guy. This is going to happen very fast.
Right.
Yeah. So, and it was everywhere. So yeah, there's a picture, and is here's the thing. There's a lot of, and I'm not knocking this listener for what they wrote here, but I see like everyone with this case like just speaks with such surety, in that there's like facts, like saying he went there and described himself wearing the same clothes as Bridge Guy. Well, did he describe it like not the same clothes as Bridge Guy? He described him wearing the same type of clothes as Bridge Guy, which, if you're from this area, which I am, it describes, I don't know, 90% of men in February over 40 years old, jeans and a Carhartt. Like that's very, 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 very normal attire for people to wear. So, he said that he was wearing jeans, he was wearing a Carhartt jacket. To your point, this was after the video was released. So, he could have been describing, himself as wearing exactly what he knew the police were looking for. But I don't think that we know that he said, I was wearing a blue Carhartt jacket and jeans. And, I don't know the way I didn't get that impression from the interview that we heard.
Mm.
Essentially he said he was wearing clothes like that, not those specific clothes. But then also, like, another thing I'm going to say, like, the witnesses only saw reported seeing one person on the trails that looked like Bridge Guy. And this is one thing that just gets into the weeds, but we all know eyewitness identification is like the worst possible evidence, almost as bad as firearm analysis. So just consider this for a minute. And I'm not trying to persuade you. I just want us to use these kind of, put these thinking caps on. Eyewitness identification is bad. We have a range from the different witnesses that saw someone out there.
We had
heights.
2 police sketches that don't look anything alike at all.
Exactly. I was getting to that next. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So I want you to ask yourself if you think there's a possible world where person A and B see a guy wearing jeans and a Carhartt and describe him and give him the information to make the sketch, And they say, yeah, he was about 5'6" and he was wearing this blue coat and he was doing this. And then person C and D walked past a different guy that was also wearing a Carhartt, and they go tell them, yeah, I saw this one guy out there. He was wearing jeans and he was wearing a blue Carhartt and he was like maybe 5'10". And that, like, we assume that they both saw the same person. Therefore, there's only one person. Therefore, it has to be Richard Allen. But the thing is, we don't know that. And I'm not saying they didn't, but what I'm saying is this is how I analyze cases like this, right or wrong. But is do we know that those witnesses all saw the same person? Or is it possible they all saw one person, and that one person that person saw and the one person that other group saw were similar enough that they got lumped together as being the same person? And nobody saw, to my knowledge, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, Richard Allen or the person they saw or anything like that with the girls on the bridge.
Oh, I think we would know that
Yeah,
at least.
right. So that's all I'm saying is when we speak in those absolutes, like he's the only one there, there's the only one that was seen. I don't know that that's true. In fact, I doubt it personally. I'm not saying that it wasn't, but I doubt it. I think that there's a good chance, and some of that comes from the fact that I don't see that the evidence fits with Richard Allen. A lot of the evidence doesn't fit with him. So then that would lead me to believe, well, then that must mean there must have been someone else out there, you know, and so that's kind of how my process goes. So it's like, well, okay, is that even possible? Well, yeah, it's possible. I'm not saying it did, but yeah, because someone could have seen actual bridge guy, and then someone else saw Richard Allen, and they were both dressed similarly enough that their vague descriptions that they gave to police, because remember, we always have in our mind that this description someone's giving is because they were like, oh, I'm looking at this person so I can tell police what they look like. That's not what's happening.
Yeah.
They're paying attention to their own things in their own world, talking to the people they're with, and they walk past somebody and don't pay them any mind. And then 24 hours later, they're like, who did you see? And then they're trying to remember who they saw.
Yeah.
Right. So just keep that in mind.
Right. Sue says, was there ever a connection found between Keegan Kline and any of the locals, like Richard Allen or Ron Logan or the guy who was driving the van?
Who did they ask if it had any connection to them?
Keegan Kline.
Did Keegan Kline have a connection to any of them? That's what they're asking?
Yeah, like, were there
Okay.
any connections ever found between Keegan Kline, who
Okay.
was for a long time and who was
Right, right.
established as a sex offender
Right.
with young women? Yeah.
Not to my knowledge. If that is the case, I'm unaware of it.
Shannon says, is there a profile out there, or could we get a profile of the perpetrator to compare to various suspects?
The FBI did do a profile. We learned that, and I think it was Barbara McDonald's the Down the Hill podcast and documentary. That the FBI did conduct a profile, but I don't know that anyone's ever seen it.
Got it. You know, even when I'm just saying, like, could we do this and compare it to the other suspects? I just want to say the thing we all know, which is that I'm relieved that many of these people have bad acts on the record, well known, because if there was only one person who did this, we just talk about so many other people who didn't.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to feel okay about that kind of when they are convicted of other very bad acts, but it's a slippery slope, everybody. Let's be careful about that. Veronica says, did they interview all the men? Speaking of, did they interview all the men involved in the girls' lives from church, school, sports, music, class, and whatever they were involved in? How did they come to the conclusion that they had just met the man that day and not someone already in their community?
Okay. I'm going to apologize again. This is on me. Okay. I got really distracted by American whatever mom in there saying that she can give me the profile. And I only half heard what you said.
Well, that's a good reason to get distracted. Veronica was just asking, did they... Again, this is one of those questions that I just don't know if anyone has the full answer to unless they were directly involved with the case and had discovery. Everything else feels maybe anecdotal to me, but I could be wrong about that. But Veronica is just looking for evidence that, you know, all the men involved in the girls' lives from church, school, sports, music class, and whatever they were involved in were interviewed, were scrutinized? How did they come to the conclusion that the girls must have just met the man that day and that it wasn't someone in their community that they already knew?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, again, I hate to keep saying I don't know, but like this is the problem when we don't have the full case file, because I don't know the answer to that. It's just like we were talking about Ron Logan earlier. Like the other people are like, well, Ron Logan was cleared. Was he? I don't know that. You don't know that. We don't see the document that says, because in those supplemental reports, in investigative reports, if they're following a lead on the lead sheets, they'll go through and then at some point they'll say cleared because of da 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 da. We don't have that. We don't know. All we know is that he was never arrested. Same thing with all these people close to them. Like we know, and some of them, like there were like I think announcements made about immediate family members. They're clear. They're not suspects. Whatever. But we just don't know. At least I don't know the full extent of how I have to believe as hard as they were trying to solve this case for so many years that they left no stone unturned
Sure.
in that regard, but I just don't have the answer.
Sure. And I would add that, again, we're cobbling together information from so many different sources, whether we know them to be 100% valid or not, but like including defense motions filed, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there are things that were said about, for example, Ron Logan's alibi that in defense filings, unless I'm mistaken, that very much questioned that alibi that may have been used to clear him or informally clear him. But again, I didn't, we are seeing the filings. We're not necessarily seeing the police files or the discovery from which some of that stuff is being claimed or what
Well,
have you.
just to be clear, like that, there may have been defense filings too, but that was when we talked about Logan back when, and I don't want to make this whole discussion about Ron Logan, but
Of course.
that was in the FBI probable cause affidavit. That wasn't a defense filing. So that's
Okay,
one
there you
document
go.
we do have where they
Got
said
it.
he told somebody to lie for him about his alibi.
Thank you. That's
all
right.
in, yeah,
I'd
that was in the
forgotten that.
probable cause affidavit by the FBI.
Yeah. But just I use that as a bad example because it was fresh in my mind. Turns out it was fresh
Yeah.
in my mind because it was in the FBI report.
Yeah.
But we can all agree that there were things that were in numerous filings by the defense where, you read it and it feels like very explosive and that it has to be pulled from somewhere, that it wouldn't just be coming out of thin air. But then you still are hoping, you hope, well, I'd love to see that, the various documents
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And maybe some of those are out there. But again, I've said while you were looking up that information that I always feel uneasy that we don't have more in front of us that we can
Mhm.
cite when we're having these more kind of casual conversations about it. But and then Emmett just agrees with what you came to, the decision, the kind of conclusion that you came to, again, with the information that you had. You were very, very careful to say that more than once, that
Yeah.
you only are drawing a current conclusion based on everything that you were seeing, and that there was certainly room for that to change if you got more information. But Emmett says, combine everything you said on the episode with the fact that Libby's phone had headphones plugged into it at around 5 p.m. or unplugged at 10:30 p.m. Same time her phone regained service, flood of text messages. One assumes that Richard Allen was with his wife at that time. And then the idea of being interested in kind of Dr. Shiloh and yours behavior analysis of the video, positing that perhaps they had an earlier contact with the girls. So that for Emmett, that tends to lead them more towards the idea of someone like Keegan Kline. I don't know how much. I think when you were talking about and then this is our last question, but more of a comment actually. But I think when I heard you talking about your conversation with Shiloh, that I was also a part of, I felt like it could be misinterpreted by people that you were saying that there was like a plan or an arrangement made. And I don't think that was not my takeaway from your conversation with Shiloh at the
No, no,
time.
no.
It seemed more that they had some sort of interaction with him. That was a theory, but not that it was like, I just don't want anyone to get the impression that you were saying like they made a plan to meet this person or there was
No,
some
no,
kind
no.
of arrangement made.
No, what we meant was that like they had ran into him on the bridge and there was a discussion about that. We used the example of like, I think Shiloh might use the example like, hey, I've got this puppy, you guys should come see it or whatever, and that there was this kind of like discomforted, where it's like this person of authority, they're trying to say no, but they agree to it, even though they don't really want to. There was something like that, but definitely not like someone they're talking to, on the phone and planning to meet. That's not what we meant by that.
Or even earlier out there. It's not that they were doing something that they planned to, but you could imagine, yes, exactly, a possibility. Or even just someone saying like, "Hey, are you guys going to cross the bridge? That looks really scary, but if you do it, maybe I'll get up the courage to do it." And then, you know what I'm saying, that the exchange could have been that casual and that recent, but like it ended and then now this person is like back
Yeah.
behind
In,
them.
in one way or another, we both just kind of concluded that this wasn't their first contact with Bridge
Yeah.
Guy
Yeah.
in that video, that they'd already had contact with them. But that's all that we were saying.
Yeah. So I just wanted to like put a little button on that and
Mhm.
and clarify that in case it was confusing for anybody. But that's what I have from the Facebook post. Thank you everyone for all your engagement. We understand your passion. Many of you had conversations with each other about these posts. I did not pull those responses. I only pulled the preliminary post. But it sounds like we're going to be walking away from this for some time, if not forever.
Yeah. I don't have any. I mean, if we're not in the middle of one of our cases and some other new piece of actual evidence comes out that I'm interested in, everybody's talking about, we may address it again. But I think that, I think we've been able to address all of the, elements of the state's case against them. And I understand there are people that are 100% convinced there's no chance he's not guilty. He definitely did it. That's fine. Like, I'm not here to argue with you, or like I said, or even persuade you. I'm just telling you, when I look at it, this is what I see. When I look at it, I see that there was I can't even say not a strong case. There just wasn't a case. Like, the gun evidence to me gets thrown out. We don't, the confessions are not reliable to me. And one thing that we didn't discuss here in the follow-up, but I discussed in the episode, is the fact that they don't even Dr. Wallace, the one that has a narrative, doesn't fit with the crime scene evidence that we have. There's just nothing there. So, that's why I landed not guilty. I'm certainly fine if you land guilty. Um, if you land on either side of that and you think that you're the smartest person in the world and it's worth, being horrible to people and attacking people because they disagree with you, I think that you need to reevaluate your life. And with that being said, I'm going to let you guys go. But before I do, I want to let you know we have coming up on Sunday, because I'm pretty excited about it.
Please.
As I made a post about it this week, and I think I mentioned it last week. This week on Monday, May 5th, was the 32nd anniversary of the day Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers were murdered in West Memphis, Arkansas.
Hmm.
32 years is a really long time to never have closure and justice in that case. And as you guys know, we've been in the middle of a battle to get the DNA in that case tested. We've been right at the finish line a few times and thought we were there, and just haven't been able to punch it across. And a lot of people have been asking, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? We're at the ready. And so, given that it's this week and all of this is like critically important right now, that we do get that ball across the finish line. The person who has become my friend over the years, someone I originally just was working on this case, Damian Eccles, agreed to come on the show and do an interview and have a discussion with me about what's been going on. For those of you guys know, he doesn't really do this anymore. He doesn't do interviews, so it was great to have him come on so you can hear from him directly. And it was a group, so it is myself, Damian Eccles, his wife Lori Davis, and Jillian Pensavalli from the True Crime Obsessed podcast. Who, if you guys don't know this, Jillian and Damian and Lori are very, very close friends. They've been friends for a very long time, like since right after Damian got out. They connected and just became very good friends. And she's always been there right by their side, and has always been there to help him and to help me, and has provided any kind of support that we could ever ask for to try to help get this done. So it's the four of us having a conversation, and that's what's coming up on Sunday. So make sure you tune into that. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Nice.
Done on the recording. Susan, you were close in your guess. Who was your guess? That's the last thing, because it's already past 9 o'clock. Why is it always so late? Why are the days gone so fast?
Yeah.
Oh, in technical difficulties. This is a new computer. I mean, it's new about a month ago. but I had to do something at one point and realized I wasn't logged into anything. That's why I was getting distracted, like over. over there.
I see. That'll do it.
All right, guys, I'm going to end this stream, but thanks everybody. It's great to see you guys, and we'll
Yeah,
talk to you all
great.
next week.
Thanks for helping us out with questions and